Hello everybody, another episode of Will's Weekly Football Roundup. As you can see, I have a guest to help me run through this. I looked up various Chelsea supporting guests. I've tried to be in contact with, I decided that Rory Jennings, he's not good enough.
No.
Zach Jalab, formerly Football Daily, not good enough.
He's good enough.
Some people who have asked about Paul Rhodes.
Solid.
We'll leave him for later, but
Top line.
everyone, otherwise, here is Headley.
Hello, very, very welcome to me. Yeah.
Welcome to you. Cool. So, got you here today to have a look at the football predictions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I haven't seen too many other channels or anything put anything up yet, but I think it's not that long now till the football season starts. I think the Community Shield is potentially coming up over the next weekend, I believe. And
then it's 2.5 weeks till the first Friday.
Yes. So, it seemed like the most sensible thing to do. Well, I've had a look at transfers over the last couple of weeks, looking at the rumours and confirmed transfers. So let's just look how I think the league's going to go based on the current state of the teams. Obviously, this could be subject to change through transfers, through managerial movements, potential points deductions, so we'll get onto that when that team becomes relevant.
Well,
cool. So we're going to go from the bottom to the top. And then we're going to potentially have a look at a few other categories afterwards, which you probably understand why we picked certain teams, certain categories based on league position. Cool. So, Headley, would you like to go first and sort of start with
all right.
who you've got as at 20th?
Do you mind me reading off my phone a little bit? Is that okay? I'll keep it cash.
Yeah.
I've taken a couple of key notes.
I'll tell you what. If you go for your bottom three, but I'll give them in the position order.
And we'll see how they compare.
We'll see how they compare, and we'll go from that then.
Controversially, but I'll give you the reasoning. Bottom, I've gone for Nottingham Forest.
That's not as controversial as you think, because
I think they're in a mess of a situation with the transfers.
I
think Nuno Espirito Santo, as much as he's like a bit of a safe bet, that style of football isn't working in the Prem anymore. And I think his track record suggests that it is on the decline.
I can agree with that.
I don't personally think that last season they finished 17th. I think that they are that calibre of club. I definitely don't think they're going to be any higher than what they were last season. They will be in and around relegation, just about safe. So I've gone for bottom, mostly through a bit of thought process and belief, but also because I like other clubs better. I've got a bit of heart.
I think there's there is some merit in that because of how the club itself is run. Marinakis, the Greek owner, sort of very gun-ho with signings in previous seasons, just throwing things at the wall, trying to see where it sticks.
He's one of the more sporadic.
And he's a combustible person, and that's not necessarily what you want. You need more stability and structure.
Well, it's working for what's the other club he owns? Because they won
Olympiacos.
Yeah, they won the conference, didn't they? Is that right?
I believe so. I'll have to fact check that one. I think it's the Greek league and the Premier League are two different kettles of fish.
Fully.
Olympiacos are well established as one of the top Greek clubs, regardless anyway. So okay. Well, I can go for my 20th.
Yeah, go for your 20th. No, we'll do that way.
Okay. So I have gone for Southampton as my 20th. And now when you're looking at the relegation, you're looking at some of the teams going up. There's obviously a big gap between Championship teams and Premier League teams.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the team that would have just got up and through the playoffs. So already sort of slightly, by that logic, slightly worse than the other two teams.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two main reasons I'm not keen on Southampton.
Mm-hmm.
One is I don't think they've necessarily, although they have recruited some very interesting players, they've not recruited enough up top. Not going to rely on Adam Armstrong to get the goals in the Premier League. Che Adams has obviously left. They might be relying on Ben Brereton Diaz, but he's never been prolific in the Premier League. A good season at Blackburn, that was it. And point number two is that Russell Martin, their manager, plays a very much possession style of football. That doesn't translate into the Premier League. It's Vincent Kompany occurred there. It's not. It doesn't translate well.
See,
and so
sort of to half jump in, I've got them in 19th, and it's all for the same reason.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I've also got Nottingham Forest 19th.
Right, okay, so what we've done is, so similar to what you're backing on, I'm almost positive Russell Martin around January time was like borderline facing sack as well. The manager, like they weren't quite in.
It took a while for them to get going, and they had to get on a big sort of brilliant.
So it's already a little bit fragmented. Similar to what you said, I just don't think they have the strike force. I can't see where their goals are coming from, and it's such a shame because Southampton are one of those clubs that I think most neutrals kind of dig. I think it started in like the Pochettino era of that club.
Some do. I suppose my allegiances are slightly off of that because of University of Portsmouth. I'm slightly a bit.
They're one of those clubs, admittedly not for the last couple of the seasons because they've been. I think they've gotten caught out making too much bank off of letting good players go. They've had too much rotation. But they're one of those clubs up until that I always loved watching on any whoever they were playing. I was like, Southampton's going to have a good go. I don't know that they're that anymore.
No, I mean it was never really sort of a sustainable thing, and that sort of makes me want to talk about another team further up in the league.
Exactly.
But we'll get onto that one.
Right, okay. So theoretically, my 20th is your 18th. Your 19th is my 20th.
Yes.
18th.
My 18th, because this is partly because I'm anticipating there to be other factors. I've gone Leicester.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think Steve Cooper is a good manager.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think this is a change in. It'll be a change in system for the players.
Mm-hmm.
People will say, "Well, they're a Premier League squad." Well, if they're a Premier League squad, probably wouldn't have gone down in the first place entirely.
Yeah.
And they've lost several players, and they're relying still on a 36-year-old Jamie Vardy to get the goals.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Who has started to become more and more injury prone, which you would that late in your career. But he's
and
missing more and more minutes.
And you're not. Some of the other one of their key players last year would be Keenan Dewsbury Hall. They've not really replaced him yet.
No.
I mean, they've sort of re-signed some of their loan signings like Fatawu, but I don't necessarily think that's be that good. So I think they'll put up a good fight.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think will potentially kill them is the potential points deduction, because I'm working on the basis that I believe that's going to occur and that will happen.
The only reason I think it won't is because of the EFL versus Premier League wobble. But equally, if they don't get relegated again, are you going to pause that for 15 years? Who knows? So
yeah, I mean, I don't think that. I firmly believe there will be a points deduction because they couldn't charge it because it was in the EFL. The EFL and Premier League being two separate identities, and so I think it will hit them because I don't think they've done as many offences as sort of the Everton and the Forest. I think it'd be quicker to process and run through. So that's sort of what I'm going for. 18th.
Okay, I've gone for Brentford, and similar to you, I have a couple of caveats.
Okay.
We'll come back into where I think he'll potentially go, but I still think they're going to lose Tony, regardless of the fact that their new signing, whose name I've forgotten, is out. Thiago?
Yes, so it's the Brazilian striker from
who they
Club
brought in
Brugge.
pretty much kind of as Tony's replacement, knowing that he was going to go.
Yeah, because
he's now out for 12 months.
I'm not 100% sure I'm up to date.
I've done my research today. I'm taking this seriously.
It's appreciated.
But I still think he'll go because theoretically speaking, even with 1 year left in his contract, he's a 50, 60, 70 million pound probably player. You can't afford to let that go on a free. So as a Chelsea fan, similar to the Conor Gallagher thing, you can't afford to let
I firmly do, but I believe he will be sold. I think Brentford are a smartly run club, so I think they don't want to lose him on a free, but they might be forced to sell him at a lower fee than they would like.
Yeah, but no. So I think they kind of got found out a little bit in the first half of last season where they were okay, but kind of they weren't capitalising quite on games the same way they were. Like without Tony, it was Thomas Frank at one point did have a bit of a wobble and people were starting to point fingers sort of around February time. I
still quite like I haven't sort of quite got them down.
No, that's fair. As I say, this is only my opinion.
As a manager, I do still rate him in being able to find issues. Because I still think there might be. Like, they weren't in the relegation zone. I get what you mean by saying a bit of a wobble, but I still think there are other sort of good players there. And I'd still back the manager to find solutions. I still think you've got good players.
The majority of the reason I put them there is because of who my 17th is. Not meaning to...
Okay.
I've gone for Hart.
Okay, but...
So my 18th...
I understand that.
Brentford.
Okay, fair enough. I can slightly see over your notes, so I can see that we've got exactly the same team 17.
Correct, yeah. So the reason I've gone Brentford for 18th is purely because I want Ipswich to stay up. And I think that possibly is heart over head. Possibly. They're your club.
Potentially, yes.
I'll let you go.
So, obviously, I was sort of trying to work out from a logical standpoint how we probably would stay up. I like to think that the recruitment sort of been done over the summer has been good. I think there are players that should Ipswich go down, it will leave them as a strong squad to potentially bounce back up again. The players that won't mind sort of too much sort of leaving.
Or the 21-year-olds you can flip for more money as well. I think you've been incredibly smart. You have, as you say, you've got players who, if they went into the Championship, they do great, and they're not big enough that that won't be above them, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
But you can also flip them for cash. Should there be? I think the way that you've covered it so far is amazing.
As well as that, I know people sort of have been sort of sceptical, saying, well, Leicester and Southampton have all these sort of Premier League squads. People have sort of doubted Ipswich to do what they did in the Championship, and sort of obviously the main factor of everything being that Kieran McKenna is sort of obviously staying. Now, obviously I do think Ipswich do play a slightly possession-based football in a similar way that Southampton do. There is flexibility in what McKenna does.
I was about to add that.
And so I think he can adapt and change. Obviously, I'd like to see Ipswich be higher up in the league, but I still think there's still some quality players needed. I'm still slightly concerned over
in the back
end,
midfield, in sort of the January to closing part of the season, like the back 4 or 5 months, the amount of counter-attacking football you played, possession football you played, the ability to sit back and defend. You made
There is the slight worry that...
He can mix it up, though.
There is the slight worry, however, that the amount of games Ipswich came back in the Championship from being in losing positions, you won't be able to do that in the Prem, which is the concern.
And you let players have, or teams have, way too many shots per game against you.
Potentially, yes. So I like I said, I think we have sort of strengthened in certain areas, and I like to sort of see how they go. Obviously, I also like this could come back to bite me in the backside over having to deal with some of the tougher games first, and then have to deal with slightly easier games for the getting rid of Liverpool and City as early games out of the way, done. No one wants to have to need points and go to the Etihad. No one does.
And also, there's no better time to play them.
Yeah, because they're not
Liverpool. Exactly, Liverpool, as much as their core players is the same, they're going to be a new system, new manager.
Yep.
And Man City start slow every year, and then for whatever reason, around December, they just decide to become unbeatable. But if you wanted to play them, it would be the first 2 games of the season.
Yeah. Obviously, I think if we manage to get a point out of one of those games, then that gives me sort of a great deal of confidence.
Me and Aaron, who's a co-worker, who's a mad Ipswich fan, have done, I think roughly you'll get 5 points out of your first 5 games.
Yeah, I could see that.
And if you average a point a game, safe.
Yeah, and I also think the Portman Road sort of side of things might be crucial, but we'll see how that goes. I'm potentially going to try and jump in and go next to 16 because it's a team we've already picked, Brentford. I'm slightly more bullish about them because of my belief in the manager. I think he can tactically change things up. I am working on the basis that Ivan Toney does go. And so I do sort of see them sliding down the table, but I just think that there'll be enough about them to just stay above, that there's enough quality there, and there are some goals there, and I think they can shut up shop. I think Brentford are always a team that do well against the big teams. They're tactically very good, and I think they drop points against the sort of teams below
and around
them, which is the slight worry with them.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask who you got for your 16.
Leicester. So far, I think we've actually named
there's only been a couple of
teams, just slightly different position.
Yes.
So I think losing Dewsbury Hall was huge. Because where we've signed him, I've watched more of the clips now, and it's not necessarily the direct goal or direct assist, but the amount of it's a bit of a washed term, but the pre-assist that he was getting.
You should get some of the thing I would say was like the ball progression. Sometimes I've seen in games where he's been able to dribble forward, he'll drag him up, bring the team forward. Yeah,
I think that will be huge. I think as much as Enzo Maresca's football worked well, I don't think it was necessary. I think, as you say, their quality would have got them up either way. So I don't think losing him is going to be massive, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm massively sold on the manager.
Okay. No,
personally, I also think, as you said with Leicester, like they're relying on they don't have. I haven't given it much of a depth in insight, but I think they don't have many 24 to 27 year like the strong average age. They've got a lot of youth and a lot of aging players.
I think they've got some exciting players like Fatawu and Mavididi on the wings, but I think if you're still relying on someone like Vestergaard at the back, who is slow and will get found out by a pacey striker.
They'll be, as I say, 16th, they'll be safe, but meh.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go for you. You've got for 15th.
I've got Everton.
Okay.
I think losing Onana is pretty big. He had 30 appearances last year. He breaks down play. He, similar to what we're saying about Hughes Buhol, he's not quite as attacking, but he does progress the ball up. He's great aerial threat. I don't think they'll be able to replace him with a like-for-like player because of the financial woes they're in.
Okay, yeah, I mean, they have spent a bit of money as well already, so I don't expect them to make too many more moves, so I can understand that.
I think that Sean Dyche, I love him as a character. He's the sort of fella you want to go have a pint with. But again, I think that kind of football doesn't necessarily work in the modern game quite as much. They may have another point deduction, we don't know, because it's still between them distributing it and then it coming back into fighting them. Who knows what's going to happen? And the only reason that I didn't have them in the relegation area is because this is their last season at Goodison Park.
I think that home form and that crowd's going to be bouncing.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think if it weren't for that, because of the mess they're in, I think they could be a bit lower. I think the last season Goodison Park factor is going to drag them kicking and screaming. So yeah, Everton 15th.
Okay. I mean, I've not got them too much higher up, but they're not just.
You've got one more than me. You've got 14.
So my 15th, I've gone for Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about Wolves that I'm just not sold on. I mean, I might be wrong because I think Gary O'Neill has been constantly proving people wrong by how well he's done in sort of in the various manager positions he's had when he's been at Bournemouth.
He'd be my wild card for England as a bit of a tangent, but carry on. Yeah.
But I'm very unsure of. I don't necessarily think their squad's sort of improved. I think they can still be very strong defensively, which is why I think they won't have any. They won't be flirting with relegation. I firmly believe any teams below this point are the teams that will be floating and moving around. Yeah. But I think Wolves will be the first one, in my opinion, that I think are safe because I think defensively they're sound. I worry about the amount of goals necessarily scored, whether Hwang Hee-chan's going to score the goals or your Matthias Cunha potentially. So I'm still.
They share it around the squad more than most other teams.
And I think you then also have to rely on the fitness of Pedro Neto as well, which is questionable to say the least, to be perfectly honest. If he could stay fit, then I'd potentially look at putting them higher, but I just never imagined it's ever going to last that long.
No, no spoilers, but they're not much higher on my list. They are, I think, as you say, there will be a drop in points, but from them and beneath, usually the last 4 teams or whatever have a lot less, and then it's like...
I think, you're cutting them off as like a group.
Yes, Wolves and under is for me, the potential relegation zone. Wolves and up on your list at least, I think are. Yeah,
I think these are sort of getting into the realms of sort of teams that are just going to be safe. Yeah. Maybe not be exciting, maybe not be interesting. So
pretty much the exact same reasons, the exact same calibre of club. I've gone Bournemouth. Their manager plays okay football. They've got alright teams. I think they are massively reliant on Solanke, and if he gets a 4 or 5 month injury, I think they're.
I'm very optimistic on Bournemouth. They're not quite down as low
because they only have, not in a derogatory way, 4 or 5 talismans. If they pick up any knocks to 2 of them, they're in big trouble because they haven't got depth. Which is why I don't think they'll be. They were 12th last season. I'm only going for 14th this season, so they'll be about there.
Okay, no, I can get that. I mean, they had a very slow start to the season. Trying to sort of get used to sort of how the manager sort of plays, having sort of transitioned sort of over a different sort of possession sort of style. And once I think they got things going, I think they started to cook in some games. Obviously, it took them a long time to get going.
From January onwards, they were solid. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I'm quite bullish on them, but I'll get on to them when I reach them. So my 14th, I've got Everton. I firmly believe, as sort of some of the points mentioned, they've been around here before. They were showing signs of like the underlying numbers last year being very sort of strong, very good, and obviously being done over by the points deductions. I don't think that's obviously
without
going
that
to be an
they'd
issue.
be fine. Yeah,
I think they'd be fine. I still worry about goals because Calvert-Lewin is not a reliable source of goals, and I worry that Beto couldn't hit a barn door to save his life, to be perfectly honest. If the ball bounces off
he's
of
one
him,
of those players that when you look at him, he should have all the minerals to be
he
amazing.
just doesn't have a first touch. The ball bounces off of him almost, I think, and I would sort of worry about that. I just think that regardless of losing Onana, I think the one thing Dyche can do is he can set up a team defensively and soundly that won't. If they lose games, they'll lose them 1 or 2-0. They won't get battered.
No, of course not.
No. Cool. So I'm going to go for my 13th place team up on Fulham. Now, I trust the manager. It's sort of solid, safe hands. They're just a good, solid, reliable team. They'll get enough results. I think they've recruited sensibly, not necessarily spectacularly, in re-signing Sessegnon to add sort of depth onto left wing because they do have sort of some of the ageing players, people like Willian. Signed sort of Smith Rowe, who's going to sort of have a good sort of contribution sort of to the team going forward. I potentially worry.
Both of them do have fitness woes, but carry on.
I potentially worry about their over-reliance on some of the other ageing players, in particular Tim Ream at the back, because that could get found out. And I'm surprised he did very well last season, and I'm surprised he didn't get done in sort of more. But I think Marco Silva knows how to set his team out. The players
He's one of those players where his footballing brain makes up for his legs a bit, but you can only do that for so long.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of the goals seem to sort of be spread around throughout the team. They're just safe, bog standard, not exciting. So 13th.
Solid. Gone for Brighton.
I'm a little bit surprised you put them lower. This is another team you put lower again.
I think this is the first year that they will struggle to compete. You know how like they always seem to have a game against City where they pull out a draw, a game against Liverpool where they whack on a win or whatever. I think this is the first year they won't do that.
See, my thought with Brighton, and this is why I'm slightly more optimistic about them this time round, is that they don't have the worries of Europe this season. I think that got to them last year.
No, that is very much true. But they have lost Pascal Gross.
That could be a big.
I get that he's 33 years old and everything else, but
the ball goes through him a lot
constantly. And I think I googled it beforehand. For the last 6 or 7 seasons, he's made 30 appearances every season. Like
various positions as well. I've seen him play at right back quite a lot.
And I don't know the manager's track record that much. He hasn't come from, I think it's a second Bundesliga league team.
Yeah, sort of. He's supposed to be a young, exciting, interesting manager. So I think this is a team that could. I could live to regret them putting them up a bit higher than you, but I can understand your.
I don't dislike them. They are one of those like plucky teams that again you just kind of can't help but want to do well. Weirdly, but I think this is the first year that they will. They've been a bit of a giant killer for 3 or 4 seasons. I think they'll get found out more this year.
Yeah, it depends how the manager as well sort of just. Yeah, how he sort of fits in, how easy it is to sort of transition over, whether it's going to be dramatically different from that of the De Zerbi or the Potter, because I think De Zerbi built on what Potter did. I think this manager might try and implement his own ideas, his own style of play. If he does that and it's too far of a stretch away from what the players know, I get that. There are definitely unknowns there, so I can understand that. Yeah. Cool. So I believe we're looking at the 12th place team. So do you want to...
Wolves. And again, I've gone for the exact same reasoning as what you had them a couple positions below. I think Gary O'Neill is solid and proven and capable. I think he's proven people wrong. I think they will share goals around their team. I don't think they'll ever be in threat of relegation, but I don't see him. I think a good season for Wolves would be, as in like overachieving, would be breaching top 10.
Yeah,
I don't think they have the players, the capability to do that. 12th.
I think all of these sort of teams I think are going to be 1 or 2 point sort of sides. So it's just going to be mind differences. So I could see. I
do like the fact that so far we only have like, other than clearly Bournemouth, we're only sort of 2 positions off here and there with each other.
Okay, well, I mean, that can sort of lead on to my next position, because
Yeah,
that one is Bournemouth.
Okay, in that case, I think yeah.
So, I have sort of a great deal of respect for the manager. I think Solanke, obviously, a lot of goals. No one's... I don't see anyone coming in for him. I think he's at Bournemouth now. Yeah. He's not going to move.
No.
I think... I'm really excited by some of the other players they've got in their team. Their team has not been picked apart either.
No.
So sort of people like Semenyo and Sinistero, I think some people sleep on them a lot and don't quite realise sort of how good these wingers can be. So it's not, people think it's solely Solanke. I think there's a lot that works around him, not solely him. So I don't believe that they're too over reliant on him. I believe they've fully signed Unal from Tafe. Sort of they had him on loan last season,
and he did well.
And I think he sort of got that sort of
physical he was growing into it, yeah.
And he's sort of getting into it, and he knows the system because he's been there for a little while. So that's why I don't think they're going to sort of drop quite as much. Okay, so for me, for my 11th, I have gone Crystal Palace.
Will they always finish 10th? Carry on.
I think this might be the time that they don't finish
10th.
Yeah. Obviously, this might be a big drama of them dropping one place. I don't necessarily know how well they're going to cope without Elise. I think some of their signings have sort of been okay in sort of I believe it's Ismail Assar used to play for Watford. They signed from Marseille recently. Kamada, who I think sort of been a quite good sort of free agent or pickup from Lazio. He had a very strong season at sort of Frankfurt. I think he was playing a deeper role at Lazio. I don't really want to see him be doing that at Palace. I think they're a solid team. I think
Glasner's appointment was huge for them.
I think keeping him happy is good, but I think some teams might start to work them out, so I don't think they're going to push higher. I don't necessarily know if Mateta's going to potentially bang in the same way that he did. I think he'll be a steady, sort of solid,
which he has been for years.
Yeah, and then you've obviously got, if things start to get bad, you've still got other players that I think can move the team forward. So you've still got Eze. I like to see sort of Wharton, see what he's like with a full campaign. I think he's had half the season. Everyone got very excited over him. I want to see what he does in a full Premier League campaign before I start buying into the hype of it, as it were.
England haven't had a player like him for decades, or whatever the quote was. Do you remember the Sergio Southgate quote?
Yes,
zero appearances.
Yeah, so like I say, he needs more minutes under his belt for me to sort of understand him sort of better. He's had sort of half a season in the Prem, so potentially they could go up higher depending on how well a player like that sort of does. But I think I've sort of covered my little points there. So.
No, not to spoil it, so I'll give you longer to talk about your 10th, but they are my 10th for all of those reasons. I literally have nothing else to add to it, but that's why I've gone for them for 10th. Okay. So for my 11th, I've gone for Fulham, and again, likewise, Marco Silva's a short bet. João Palhinha, I think, could be a loss.
I don't think Boyne have come back in for him.
He's gone.
Is he gone?
He's gone.
Has it been confirmed?
No, he's gone.
Gone?
I'm almost positive.
Oh, I'll have to double check.
Fact check that. I'm almost positive he's gone.
I don't think he'll be as much of a miss as people think if he does go.
His turnover stats were like...
Now, I get what you're saying. Statistically, he looks amazing and defensive monster. He's someone, when you watch him play, he runs for the ball, he goes for that, and his tackle numbers are brilliant. But him running, doing that, he leaves space in behind. His positional sense, it's infuriated Marco Silva at times. So statistically, as a CDM, he'll look amazing.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think, I don't think Marco
it's
Silva
as
will
much
mind
of a pro
because
as a con.
you can get, there are pros and cons to his,
I get all
his signing ability. So,
But no, so Fulham, for the exact same reasons, you've put them in 13th, I've put them in 11th, just a little bit higher. And as I say, Crystal Palace, the exact same reasons
I think these teams are a much of a muchness. I think this is almost like another sort of separate group that I'd sort of say is wrapping up here.
From 10th to 15th, I think it's anyone's game.
Yeah, okay, I get that. So, my 10th, I've gone West Ham.
Solid, nice, yep.
It's a good squad, sort of reliable. I want to put them up higher, but I don't necessarily know how the Lopetegui style of things is going to go. And I could potentially see them going a bit further down. I think West Ham fans obviously sort of pushed Moyes out, potentially down to the style of play. I don't know why people might necessarily be getting excited with Lopetegui because he does a very similar style of play. He's a defensive manager.
In my notes, I've put it's a sideways step.
It's not a sort of they're going to play more interesting football. So
it's a new face, same system.
It's a new face, potentially same system, but you might not necessarily. There might be sort of tweaks in how they press potentially, to which I don't necessarily know if the players are going to buy and like getting behind it, because I think they were obviously closer with Moyes. They built up the relationship there. Whether the West Ham fans potentially get on his back, I don't know. We'll sort of live to sort of see on that one. But
I think it'll be a little bit boy who cried wolf. I think the West Ham fans could come to regret the amount of hate that he was getting. The seasons that West Ham slipped up on, they were usually in the Conference or Europa.
I sort of want to say the same thing. Yeah.
They did well enough to get back into.
Because on the flip side of it, you sort of say they did well, sort of getting the Conference League positions.
Yeah.
Who do you think they were going to finish above? Realistically, from when they're finishing the Conference Leagues, they're going to finish above the Cities, the Arsenals, the Liverpools. No, they weren't. I'm sorry, that's just the quality of the squad's
I know Moyes is a bit boring to watch, so I can understand from a fan's point of view.
He knows the league, he knows how to do.
I don't
what
think
he
you're
needs
going
to
to finish much higher with any other manager. I've put them for 9th. Again, there's nothing more I can say. I think it's a sideways step in terms of management. I don't want to sound like an entitled Big Six fan, because I became a fan of them in the 89-90 season. So I'm pre the money. So what I'm about to say, I'm going to caveat with, it's not me as a Chelsea fan going, oh, little clubs or whatever. But I don't know what West Ham fans think that they can do more of than qualify for the Conference League.
Unless there's sort of a bigger financial investment potentially. That's how I'd see it.
That's them having a great season.
That's them having sort of plateaued potentially.
Yeah.
So if from that you sort of.
And I get that the whole point of football is, as a fan, you have to dream. Like you have to strive for more. That's what sport is. But that's why I think the level of hate that Moyes got was a bit overkill.
Yeah. No, I get that, and I'd sort of almost get a bit bitter about that, sort of not wanting West Ham to do it because of the treatment of David Moyes.
Yeah. So no, they're for me 9th, the exact same reasons.
Okay, well, I guess this wraps up all the other teams that we've had so far, because I've got Brighton 9th.
There you go. Yeah, so we are much of a muchness.
Much of a muchness. Yeah. Although I think some of the change in manager and sort of some of the signings they've got from sort of Europe are unknowns to potentially some people in the Premier League. Brighton don't normally miss.
No.
They don't normally miss. They're not playing in Europe. I think the manager will sort of be sort of good enough, and they're a team that I don't think really got picked apart.
No.
With exception, I suppose, to Gross obviously going. We'll see how big a move that is, but in other sort of some of the teams, having a look at a team of losing like a player for big money, sort of like the Caicedos, the McAllisters.
They recovered from that surprisingly well, actually.
So you're sort of potentially looking at sort of where the next sort of big money is, because as you were sort of mentioning Southampton earlier on, that's how I sort of see Brighton now. That's how I saw Southampton a few years ago. A team that had to sort of that sell sort of a big player every other season.
Yeah.
Brighton, I'm worried that it's not going to necessarily be sustainable. So I'm worried that might be where the decline starts. But I think at the moment, I think they're a very well run club. A lot of unknowns, so I might come to regret that, but that's why I've sort of got them 9th.
The owner, I know you can't really get much from TalkSport, it's TalkSport, but the ownership often have features and segments on there, and they sound like they know what's going on. The amount of players they've lost, as a Chelsea fan, the amount of
Bloom,
staff that we've nicked from them, and yet they don't have a performance drop. No. Whatever they are doing in terms of both player recruitment and just like general staff recruitment, they know what they're doing.
They know, yeah.
It's just how long can they do that for?
Yeah.
But no, so I as much as I've put them lower down, it would not shock me.
I mean, with teams in this group, you sort of slightly worry as to whether these are the teams that you worry if they attempt to overreach and spend big. That's usually when the mistakes sort of potentially happen, and they mess up a big signing and then they drop. Brighton haven't really done that yet.
No.
Which is that's the sign when I'm starting to think that it's going pear shaped for them. So I get your point there. Do you want to have a crack at 8th then?
I've seen who you've got, so you far away.
Okay, well I sort of I might have to leave you to potentially talk about this one. So 8th, I've got Chelsea.
It would not shock me, but
I think there is obviously the change up of the manager. I believe that the team was making progress towards the end of the season. I think the change up of the manager, change up of the systems to a Pep disciple, I think is going to potentially. It's not going to help them get forward. I don't think. I think he's a manager expected to get a team promoted because it was a good squad.
Yes.
I think he's trying to bring in players that understand the way he plays, like Dewsbury Hall.
Yep.
However, I don't know who's going to be in the squad. I don't know what that 11's going to be because I think that's still 40, 50 players almost in that squad. I know there's about 5 goalkeepers who I could actually name. I don't think I could do that with another football team. So there's clearly, I don't know who your number one's going to be. Is it going to be Petrovic? I think there's a new sort of chap signed from the Liga. You've still got Kepa on the books. You've still got Sanchez on the books.
Yes, it will be between Jorgensen and Kepa. No, he will be the third choice. Yeah.
But it's sort of decisions like that, and I think Chelsea's the thing with them is I don't think they ever needed to sign anyone this window. I just think they needed to sell players.
Yeah.
They needed to just clear them out and have a clear idea of what's going on, what's going forward, and one of the other things with Chelsea as well is Cole Palmer. Now, Cole Palmer himself was brilliant in the Pochettino system. Yeah. I don't necessarily know if he's going to have as good a turn in this system.
Pochettino is chaotic. He's the sort of flary, talismanic player that will
on top of that, he's also a player that I think might have been running a little hot.
Yeah.
And so I think he'll come back down closer to sort of numbers of XG.
Yep.
I don't think he'll really get as many chances potentially. So I just think that the amount of goals is going to come down a little bit.
He will be 10 less goals and 10 less assists this season. And he'll get hate from the Chelsea media because our fan club is.
But he's still a good player. He's still a young player at the moment, and because of that, as a young player, they can't always be consistently at that level. No. Sort of, there's going to be ups and downs.
I think anyone with a reasonable head on their shoulders knows that he was proper outpunching his numbers last season. So for anyone who's thinking it's going to continue, no. If it does, marvellous. But I will deep dive when I go into them. But I for all of your reasons, fair. And I honestly, I can't argue it. I've gone with a little bit of heart over head.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. I think I've obviously done that sort of earlier in there.
My 8th is Newcastle. Okay. Caveats. There's a lot of hubbub about Eddie and the England job.
Do you think he'd go for the England job if he got offered it?
No. I think you're more likely to win a League Cup with Newcastle than you are to win anything with England.
Yeah, well, I don't think international football is quite as appealing as as club
he also seems the way that he sort of rebuilt himself and spent time with various coaches and everything else. He seems to be a ball in the grass coach, for lack of a better word. You don't get that in international management. You have 4 or 5 training camps a year. It's not the same. I don't think he'll go, but there's hubbub about it, so it wouldn't surprise me if they had a slow start. I'm not even necessarily saying he'll go. There's just noise. And noise isn't good. Financially, they're still a season away from being able to use the money that they actually have.
I mean, they've sort of managed to sell the books, sort of their books. Yeah. People are selling people like the winger Minter to Brighton, so they didn't have to sell one of their big signings like a Bruno Gia and Alexander Isak, which would have been the big war if I was a Newcastle.
This year or this window, they've balanced it. Because of that, they're 12 months away from actually being able to go a bit more gung-ho again, which they will do because of the amount of money behind them. It's just a matter of time. So again, I think for Eddie, why would you leave now knowing that's coming?
Okay.
But injury-prone players in key positions.
Which sort of players are you sort of...
Trippier is... And to be fair, I think he was also looking at maybe we're going to Bayern.
The Trippier, I think the rumours lately have been him to go to Saudi potentially.
Because
I think there are rumours of him leaving.
Isaac has missed 20 games a season for 2 or 3 seasons. Okay. He is one of those players that just when he's in form, amazing.
Yeah.
I think they will be challenging for Champions League again in the next 3 years, and then consistently. I think what happened is The money came in, they made some big money moves, they got a bit of a good squad, and now because they didn't have necessarily like the players behind them to flog at the same time, I think that's one way that clubs like Chelsea can get away with it. Is we can say, here's a really talented 21-year-old, give us 30 million, balance the books a bit. They don't necessarily have that, so they're in a bit of like a financial rut more than anything else.
Okay.
So, but equally, there is nothing wrong with Newcastle finishing 8th. It wasn't that long ago that they were in the EFL.
Yeah, I mean, their push to get a Champions League has sort of reshuffled things because they went ahead of what
the expectations
jumped. Yeah, I can get that. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, 8th Newcastle.
Okay. Who have you got for 7th then?
Man United.
Okay.
Okay. I think that Casemiro is aging. Eriksen is aging. Rashford has not picked his form up for a while.
I think there's a trick with Rashford is he sort of has a good season and has a rough season. So I'm more working on the basis that he's had a
30-goal year.
I think he's going to hit. I reckon this season he's going to hit a purple patch.
Who knows?
Potentially.
I think as much as Erik ten Hag and Sancho have apparently put it behind them, I don't know. I think it's maybe more burnt bridges there than perhaps people are letting on.
Do you think Sancho's going to get in the team though?
Because the amount of wage he's on, because of the profile.
But I think I don't know whether he does potentially because I think most of the fans do back Erik ten Hag, and I think you've got the option of having had Garnacho potentially on the left or the right. I think he's a starter regardless of potentially whether Rashford's fit or not. I'd look at Diallo as your right winger over Sancho.
That's where he's been playing in pre-season.
And I think towards the end of the season, I think he looked very good. Obviously, he looked to get more minutes potentially. Obviously, because I think he had an injury throughout last season.
I'm going to ask you a question here.
Okay.
All right. Man United, as much as they are in a rut for the past, whatever it is, 10 years, arguably in the bracket of one of the 3 biggest clubs in the world, in terms of like their presence and history.
The status. Yeah.
McKenna gets sacked tomorrow. For whatever reason, you get linked with Ten Hag. Are you happy?
I mean, it's a great sort of stretch of the imagination to see Ten Hag.
No, it's not going to. It won't happen. I'm just saying, would you be happy? That's the problem.
Probably not.
That's the problem. He doesn't have the charisma. He just, even though he's won 2 trophies in 2 years at United and has pulled out some good results out of his arse, the fit isn't quite right.
I get that. Like, I've not got them potentially much.
He hasn't got the
aura
I understand how of a United manager. As much as I really dislike United, it just, I don't know. But to be fair, that may work against me in that if they do get rid of him in 6 months and bring in probably Pochettino, maybe they will fly. But no, so I've gone for a bit lower down, and perhaps I'm being a bit mean on Ten Hag.
Okay. No.
Seventh for United.
For my 7th, I've gone Aston Villa.
Okay, I know your reasoning already, and I'm going to
there might be ulterior motives to one of the people that's watching this. But besides that,
have you made a bet again?
Yes.
Okay. Was it Villa and United again? Or?
It was not Villa and United again. This was Villa Ipswich.
Okay.
On the basis that he'll win the bet if Villa get 6 points against Ipswich, but if they don't, I win. As simple as that. Villa should get 6 points against Ipswich. However, I think they could get. Think they could get Ipswich could get a draw at Portland Road potentially.
Sorry, carry on there.
So I think that their recruitment wise, I think they've added depth.
Yeah,
I think they have added depth, but
I don't think preparing for Europe.
I don't think they've added enough to that first 11 to improve that first 11. I think Onana comes in as the replacement for Douglas Luiz.
Yep.
I think potentially he's more reliable defensively, but not sort of as good in the way of sort of ball progression as Douglas Luiz.
He was more box to box, but defensively minded, whereas Onana is Azidia.
I think that there are more games in this European competition because it's a change of format for the Champions League as well.
Yeah.
So although Aston Villa did very well playing Europe last year, these are tougher games. These are bigger games. You're not going to the sort of lower sort of teams like the PA sort of teams in Greece. You're going to up against the Milans, the Madrids potentially. That's different. That's big, and you're going to focus so much on that. Even if Emery does normally do well in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I am also work on the basis that I think Watkins was firing a little hot last year. I think the amount of goal contributions he's had, I think he's a very good player, and I think he's one of the best strikers in the league, but I don't think he will fire as hot again this coming season.
What I would say is throughout his career, though, through all the leagues, he has been on a slow uphill.
I'm not going to say that he's suddenly going to not get any goals.
I know what you mean. 4 or 5 less or whatever. Is that what you mean?
Potentially. I don't think he's potentially going to have as much because he's got a lot of assists last year as well.
Yeah.
I just don't quite see. I don't quite see that. Excuse me as I'll just grab someone. There you go. So I think the squad's. I think they're smart to improve in the squad, but I don't think they're improving enough in that first 11. Like, I know a lot of Villa fans sort of saying like, well, what about the right backs? If you got sort of Matty Cash sort of going up against Vinicius Junior, sort of think, well, there's only going to be one winner there, unfortunately.
So controversially,
keep playing as
this is why I've put them higher, because I think they'll come out of Europe quickly.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And partly obviously maybe tied into my previous bet that I unfortunately lost. Team I've got above Aston Villa is Man United.
Nice, yeah.
I think that this is going to be a potential season of progression for United. Not necessarily moving up the leagues, but I think how the clubs run, the infrastructure. I think Ineos are changing everything in the boardroom side of things, and I think it's going to start to move forward. I think there's going to be, hopefully, a style of play, which is I think what most United fans potentially actually want more than anything. They want to see how's it going, what's working on. You can't just sort of be this solely focused on counter-attacking teams and relying on sort of the pace of people like Rashford and Garnacho. I think there might be a slight transition there, and I think some of the signings so far I've been quite happy with. I think they've added depth into the striker position, although admittedly I think Xerxes and Højlund are I think they're two different players.
And that
as a system-wise, so this might be a sign of a change in system potentially. I think Lenny Euro is a good sign. Unfortunately, I think he's injured now for a couple of months, so potentially they were linked with another defender as well, so if they continued with that and tried to look at De Ligt, maybe.
I think they put in a bid for both of the behind centre backs, didn't they? De Ligt and
Upamecano?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the one other signing, and I think you've already mentioned sort of the other player they want potentially replacing. I think they're linked with Ugarte, and I want him as a replacement for Casemiro potentially. I think Casemiro's basically going.
Made no sense.
And I think you need that physical presence. I think Ugarte, as long as, because PSG want to get rid of him, they want to clear the books. So I think they can get him for a good deal, good fee. I think United potentially need to shift a couple of players as well to balance the books. Why not?
I don't even think it's necessarily balancing the books. I think they have a massive player power problem there. And I know I'm speaking with the quiet hair as a Chelsea fan, but they seem to have a problem with character. And that's not something you associate United
this
with.
Is where I actually think I give Erik ten Hag credit, because he
the way he handled Ronaldo,
I think how he's handled the Ronaldos and the Sanchos. I think he knows that he's not. He's resisting that. He's not. The players aren't having as much power, and I think they did under people like Solskjaer because it's just a buddy. Just put your arm around him. Yeah. I think it's different with Ten Hag. I think that's one of his strengths potentially, is the fact that he won't take as much rubbish from some other thing. But I don't obviously see them go much harder than this. I think the next few teams coming up, I was very undecided over where to put them, as I think this is sort of this could very much change, and I think it's a very thin line between a lot of them. Okay, so you've got for your 6.
So for my 6 is Chelsea.
Okay.
So I haven't gone nuts.
Yeah, so you've obviously been a bit more optimistic and bullish.
I've been more optimistic, but still realistic. I think you don't have the amount of change that we've gone through, boardroom level, general staff level, coaching level, player level, and still expect us to be on this uphill. we will finish in 6th again and we'll play a very different system. Palmer's numbers will drop. They just will. I'm very worried about goalkeeper. I'm very worried about centre back.
You've got a few options to pick on both of those positions. No, I think that's the worry.
They're not brilliant. Like
it's options. Yeah. I didn't say they were good options.
Fafana theoretically could be an absolute Rolls Royce. Colwell could be an absolute Rolls Royce. James, if you can keep him fit, is ridiculous. He's had if they are looking for this inverting system, he's got midfield experience. It makes complete amounts of sense. If you can keep the likes of Nkunku fit, absolutely brilliant. Like if we were to click, I think we're an absolutely amazing unit, but I think we're a year away from that.
I think I want to raise sort of just two questions, get your perspective on this. There's two. I worry about the dressing room at Chelsea currently. Two things I worry about. Mm-hmm. I worry about Cucurella, not because of him being his ability. I imagine he is going to get absolutely hammered by English fans at any of the stadiums he goes to because of his various songs. And him singing about someone at Haaland saying how he's better, I almost just want Haaland to flatten him from a neutral perspective.
What I would say,
I don't necessarily know sort of how he's going to react to sort of the focus.
The Chelsea fans haven't been warm and welcoming to him anyway.
Oh, so he's naturally been used to it, potentially. The other more pressing issue is Enzo Fernandez.
Yeah.
I think his songs and his chants. I think some of the people on the tweets have sort of said it's under the rug, but what do you reckon?
It doesn't go away overnight. So an amount of it is probably they are just mates. So it is one of those things where it's like, I'll kind of forgive you, but you might have a little bit of resentment in the back of your mind. The other part of it is, from a PR point of view, Chelsea's representatives probably just went, just fucking put a photo out. Like, regardless of if you mean it or not. Like, keep the peace. Because it becomes messy.
It's
not something I particularly want to talk about. I think it's hot. I think it is abhorrent, and I think he should be sanctioned more than he currently has been. I don't think.
Yeah.
I can't. At the moment, we seem to be welcoming back in and going, "Oh, it was a mistake. Don't worry about it. It's fine." It is huge. Mm. I don't think he's necessarily a nasty chap. He doesn't come across that way. But I don't know.
I think even as a young man, you've got to be more sensible, more wary of what you're sort of saying and singing.
Don't do it
you've got people around you that should be telling you no.
So I think that will be a bit of a problem. I think the general injuries to the squad will be a bit of the problem. We don't really have any natural leaders. One of the natural leaders that we do hypothetically have in Gallagher, we're getting rid of.
Yeah. What do you think of his sell? Because I think it's so stupid. I think he's probably been your second best player last year. However, it's a pure profit. It's PSR balancing the books.
From a footballing point of view, it makes no sense. From a book balancing point of view, it's logical with your business.
Midfield sort of looked better when they dropped sort of the Enzo and put the Gallagher in, because he would just he could be a dog's body and he could just sort of do what was required.
As we were saying, Pochettino is more chaotic.
Okay.
So I'm not justifying it. I think some of Chelsea's decisions in the last 10 years has been absolutely mental. It's been really difficult to love my club in the last 10 years. Like, I'm not going to be like, no, like Todd Boehly knows exactly what he's doing. Clear Lake are brilliant people. I'm not going to do that because it's not true. But I think we still have enough about us. Again, fitness, please, touch wood for the love of God, to get top 6.
Okay. No, that's fair.
But it's as I say, it's. At the moment, like as a Chelsea fan, the reason I love Chelsea is because I watched an Ipswich game, the 99-2000 season. My dad took me. It was Ipswich versus Chelsea. I was 6 at the time, didn't really know any better. I watched Zola, Hasselbank, and Johnson tear you to shreds, and I was like, right,
those from now on, very aesthetically pleasing players.
Chelsea fan, like
you sort of
like, but. It's difficult because as someone who does live in the Ipswich area, like there is not a better time to be an Ipswich fan right now. McKenna has galvanised you. You're massively on the up. Back-to-back seasons, it's beautiful. And then when I'm trying to watch Chelsea on TV and like be passionate about them, and in terms of like the decisions we're making from a boardroom and the signings, it's so difficult. Like it's not fun being a Chelsea fan currently.
I see that with every tantrum I see from Rory Jennings on TalkSport. From a neutral perspective, I find it funny, but as a Chelsea perspective, I imagine it sort of makes you want to pull your hair out with some of the decisions made.
I doubt they're going to get into YouTube beef over him, but I think he's a some of the stuff he says is definitely just like prompting a reaction, and some of the stuff he says is just nonsense.
Okay, well, if he wants to watch this and go for it,
Fight me.
fight me then. Come on then. So, I'll back you on that. So who have you got for your number 5 then?
Tottenham, and it pains me. It pains me to put them higher than this.
See, I've matched you there. That's one of the first ones we've got exactly spot on right. Yeah,
it's just the only one so far. That's kind of baffling, actually. So going back to my Brentford tease earlier. Richarlison out, Tony in.
I could see a deadline day move where Tony moves because Brentford want to shift in, they can't. Tottenham say, here's 30 million.
Yep.
Fine, gone.
Yep.
Done.
If you do that, like Ange Ball, second season, usually the system's been a bit more embedded. They've got a couple of the players in, a couple of the players out. They're one of the teams, actually, weirdly, that, like, from a management point of view, they haven't been winning trophies, but actually from, like, a boardroom level, it kind of makes sense.
They're one of the most well-run clubs. They're so in the green financially.
Yeah, not from like football is a sport. It's a competition. You want to be winning stuff.
Yeah,
they don't do that. But from
as a business point of view, like Daniel Levy, he runs a tight ship.
You can't can't ask for more than what they're doing.
Yeah.
So no, second season of Ange Ball, a couple of extra signs through the door. Very smart. Fifth. That if it works, fourth.
Yeah, see, these teams are very sort of similar, and I can sort of see my mind changing. I think
Whereas I don't think United or Chelsea will push for the top 4. But you know what I mean? They're not. I think
Spurs are more capable of it.
Spurs are the team. Awful thing to say as a Chelsea fan, who I think will be pushing the hardest for Champions League.
Yeah, I sort of get that. I think it's another year with the players sort of adapting to the system. Sort of, it's a very high pressing system. I think the players will get better at it, so they shouldn't be as leaky. But I think they will still be leaky. I think even if you sign someone like Tony, the issue with Spurs isn't scoring goals; it's keeping them out.
Well, that first Chelsea game was absolutely ludicrous.
It shows that they still can be got at, and maybe that's just how the style of players you might stick to it, or the players they might just naturally find a way of
making it work,
of pressing and making it better. But there's still always that. The main reason I didn't put them top 4 is the Spursiness.
Yeah.
There's going to be a freak result that they could potentially.
It'll go down to the wire on the last day.
They could somehow beat City 2-1 and then somehow lose like 3-1 to Ipswich. Fingers crossed.
No, yeah.
And you wouldn't bat an eyelid.
No, that's so normal for them. Yeah. So
and it's that reason that I haven't put them in the top 4. But that was the sole reason I haven't put them above any of these other teams that I'm going to go into. So I'll go for number 4 because it's a team we have already mentioned. I've been a lot more bullish about. I've got Newcastle. Now, there's multiple reasons. I understand your sort of viewpoints that you sort of made. However, I think. I don't think that the one thing that worries me is there's not been enough business coming in improving the squad, and I sort of get that. However, there are a couple of things that I would sort of caveat with. I think they've added depth into the back line in people like Lloyd Kelly. I think just adding depth into the squad as a whole was an issue that they needed to start resolving, and they're starting to. Obviously, they're limited by what they can do. I think one thing I'm not 100% sure is Tonali's suspension.
As far as I know,
he might still be banned. I was thinking if he gets back into the team, I think he could do well because he still trains with them, so it's not going to be an issue of fitness or anything like that.
He will essentially be a new signing for them.
Yes, I think there's other signings as well from last sort of season that had injury issues. I think are going to get bigger runs in their game. People like Harvey Barnes, I think could have a strong sort of season.
Yeah.
I think Anthony Gordon's going to step up again. I think he's going to continue to go on. I think he'll get a bee in his bonnet over not playing more minutes in England. I firmly believe that. And I'm also working on the basis that someone like Isak is going to stay fit. And if he does stay fit, I don't think you can argue. If he does stay fit, he'll be quality. Fitness is the issue.
Top 3 strikers in the league when fit. Yeah.
And I think sort of the fitness over the goalkeeper, I think, was another potential issue that I had
they can keep poking the net.
And I think that they will. I think injuries like that to goalkeepers are rare.
Injuries to the keeper, then a couple of injuries to the centre backs. Isak was in and out. Barnes looked great when he was playing. He was in and out. If they can keep
Obviously,
that course,
I think it's a case of I'm working on the situation that they're not going to be hamstrung by injuries, which is why I can see them doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as well as that, some of the other teams around here, they've had dramatic changes in either management or players, and Newcastle haven't.
No,
and you don't
3 seasons. Yeah,
and a consistency can be
as much as I gave you up when you said it. You've actually taught me around.
There was a stage where I actually crossed them out. So I actually almost envisioned them going higher, but I've seen a bit more sense now, and I've nudged them a bit further next. So don't worry about that. I'm working on the basis of obviously a bit of luck with sort of injuries providing, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I know they are trying to sign players. There's sort of the striker from Sheffield United, although I don't think that adds a great deal of sort of quality. It's another thing over depth, I think, which is...
It's for when Isaac is eventually out.
They've still got the Callum Wilson sort of as well, and I think I'm getting more confident over Eddie Howe, and I don't see a world where he takes the England job. I think Newcastle is a far more attractive offer and situation, so I don't see him moving or changing. I think England are right to approach him, but I don't see him going. I think Newcastle is far more appealing, far more interesting. For him, and I think he's still a young manager as well, so I think the England job could potentially be there post whoever gets picked next potentially for him. I think the option will be there, so I don't think he's in any rush.
No.
So what have you got for your number 4 then?
Villa.
Okay.
Linking back to what I said when you were talking about them, I don't see them going miles into the Champions League because of this new format. Because you are now more likely to play the big guns early.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think if they can be back out of it again by March or whatever, other than that, January.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of tempted to see how this actually sort of runs this new format, because I think
I don't know that much about it because it's a bit of a weird thing. But I think the Arsenal fans were remarkably harsh to Emery. I think anyone following Wenger's reign would have struggled. I think he is arguably at the moment definitely top 10, maybe pushing top 5 coaches in world football in terms of what he's able to do with the clubs he's at.
When I'm looking at the top managers in the Premier League, he's up there. I'd say he's in my top 3.
How he's managed to punch in Europe with some of the squads he's been at is remarkable. So no, I'm back in their squad. I think their signings have been really clever. They've kept the core of their group and the Emery factor. So I think top 4.
Okay. Like as I was sort of saying, so you think probably the depth sort of going to be able to help them in sort of the Europe?
They can hypothetically play 2/3 of their regular squad, and 1/3 of this, like the fringe level players that they've brought in, can come in for the Europe. They'll get knocked out a little bit early. I think you no longer go into the Europa League anymore.
Do you think Emery might potentially look at... He's got a track record of doing quite well in Europe, maybe not as much in the Champions League.
It's not Champions League.
What if he potentially slips into Europa League as one of the next...
No, because I don't think you do that anymore in the Champions League. I don't think that's how it works.
So it's Europa League can slip into the Conference League.
But I think they've gotten rid of the slip.
Okay.
I think they're more likely to win an FA Cup and or a League Cup than they are to go far in Champions League.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Okay. No,
so top 4. And great. Yeah.
Cool. I've got a feeling we might match on this next position.
Correct.
Because I think the teams above there are in a different league. So for 3rd, I've gone Liverpool. Now, I think that squad is still very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think you worry that you're following such a big manager, arguably Liverpool's best in the 21st century.
Yes, but I don't think
and one of the best in the Prem.
Yeah.
But I think the quality of that squad's still good, and I'm looking at the teams around them, and I'm trying to think, are any of these teams going to be better even with a new change in style? And I don't think they are.
You could put me or you as manager there, and with the spine and a little bit of the sides, like with Alisson, with Van Dijk, as much as he's aging a little bit and whatever, with the wing backs, with their midfield 3 of Endo Henderson and Szoboszlai. Incredible. They're everything I'd look for in a midfield.
But you're also just the consistency, because one of the sure things you can also back on is, I suppose, is Salah is an incredibly consistent goal scorer.
Yeah.
Do you see? I don't see it dropping off.
And even if it does, it'll be by a couple of the goals.
I mean, I thought it was potentially, the worry was if you lose Klopp and Salah goes to Saudi, because there was the rumour of that. That situation, I would see them dropping, but he's not. No. And I think he's someone that's going to get near 20 goals a season still. Yeah. And I think Nunes is going to still sort of. I think he's steadily going to get a little bit sharper.
Mm-hmm.
I think
he's got all the minimum. He's a bit of a laughing stock on social media or whatever.
He misses some of the simple chances, but like if you look at his goal contributions, they've still been steady. They've still been good. They've still been reliable.
And the way that he puts fear into centre backs when he's sprinting at
it's the chaos factor, as they call it. It's the
solid. So no, I don't. They are a level off of first and second, but they are a level above everyone else. That they are solidly third.
Okay. Cool. So this could be the.
Do you want to do your title winner?
So I'm going to go for. I might just sort of give the 2 and the 1.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe have to sort of discuss both.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Arsenal winning it and City finishing second.
Okay.
I don't think City are improving the squad to the level. I think they've signed the Brazilian sort of winger.
Mm-hmm.
Who was obviously part of the City group being on loan at Girona last season. I'm worried. I don't know about the hunger of the players in that team. I've heard rumours of Edison getting a bit bored, potentially looking at Saudi moves. Like Haaland's going to bang goals. That's guaranteed. Yeah. But it's the mental side of it. I think the squad is still like one of the best, but I just think you need to be able to get that fight sort of going. It's sort of how Dwight York was after Man United won the treble. He goes and sort of has the chat with sort of Fergie, sort of saying, sort of with his still off on hollybobs, and Fergie sort of hated that.
Yeah.
It's sort of the mindset. You've won it, you've done it.
Yeah.
Like City aren't going to go and win the treble again under Pep, and I just think Arsenal, they're hunting. They're a younger squad. I think they're still trying to improve the players and the depth in that squad, because the depth was the one thing missing from them. I think adding people like Calafiori, I think Jurriën Timber being fully fit
again,
as well.
It will be a new signing essentially.
Essentially, yes. And people worry about the potential idea of them signing an in-time striker. They don't need to. The strength in Arsenal is the fact that they've got goals spread out from that team, like Saka, Odegaard, Havertz, Martinelli. These are players that are all going to get Trossard, for example. They're all players that are ones that you're going to look at as players that are going to get potentially 10 goals and 10 assists.
Yeah.
That's spread across the team. That's a lot of goals. And a lot of assists.
Last January, when they had that 26 goals in 3 games or whatever it was, they're not going to hit that continuously. Like no club does. But they don't need an outright number 9 to get goals. Is the point?
Well, that, and they're so defensively sort of strong as well. They're so settled. Arsenal had the best defence in the league last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I'm backing them to get over the line. And I think that might give City a kick up the arse for the potential next season. But that's how I see it. Yeah.
I've gone the other way.
Okay.
But this will be the last season that City win it for 3 years. That's my bold claim, because I think
there's the rumours that Pep's contract's up at the end of this year as well.
Pep is going. A lot of the players, like you say, Edison, are rumbling. You've got Alvarez, hypothetically, and a few of the other sort of... And I think a lot of the reasons for this is this massive point span, massive fine, massive...
That's looming over them, and I think that's going to hit them when Pep leaves. And City is that could be a
this
really
will be the
fun
start
thing.
of, I think, a 3-year downfall. You've also got the players like the De Bruyne who have been carrying on the back who's now aging out.
He's slowly... There's been a bit of a decline, and there's been links with Saudi, so there's clearly sort of no smoke without fire.
So I have them the other way around, but it's for this season. Arsenal will win it next year. In my opinion.
Yeah, so one last hurrah with sort of Pep potentially being able to put some over the line.
Again, that's assuming the points deduction doesn't happen this season.
I'm working on the basis that it doesn't.
Yeah. If it doesn't, City will win it. I think it will be tight again. It's only going to be 4 or 5 points in it. But from next season, that's when I think there'll be like a 3-4 patch year of Arsenal being dominant, because as you said, they've got a younger, hungrier squad. So it's only just it's this last little fall off the edge for City, and then I think it will be
okay.
Arsenal.
No, that's fair. I've got a couple of little sort of subcategories to potentially have a bit of a look at for a bit of fun, based on my sort of league based on a lot of league positions. Potentially having a look at flops and sort of dark horses based on sort of the league positions. Obviously, with Forest going down, I think I have them as my big flops. I don't know if other people think highly of them, but I think the big money signing of Elliot Anderson, a player who barely played in the Prem for 35 million, it signs that it's not going the right way. And I think they might do okay if they keep Awoniyi fit, but if he's not, I think it's trouble. And obviously my dark horse, I suppose, is I do my firm backing of Newcastle, sort of highlighted as well. I think they're going to really sort of have a big old pump.
Yeah, and you honestly did win me over with that, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
For me, it would be flop Brentford. I think this will be the year that they don't quite do it. I think it's almost out of their control because of the Tony thing, etc. So they're my flop. And I think my dark horse, because, not to anger your Aston Villa fan, but because everyone's expected them to drop because of the Champions League, I'm going to have them as my dark horse, because I think where they have added to the squad depth, their level is not going to drop. Does that make sense?
Okay. No,
so not dark horse in terms of like small club doing really well, but just people are expecting them to have a drop.
They'll maintain a level of consistency.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been a bit boring for top goal scorer. Haaland.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to be Haaland. Yeah. I mean, they're just.
He'd have to be out for 3 quarters of the season for it not to be him.
I mean, even then, I still think he'll somehow get like 5 goals against Wolves and probably be okay. I mean, for my player of the year, partly because I've got Arsenal winning it. If they do win it, I think it's going to be down to Odegaard. I rate him so highly. I think he's one of the best footballers in the league. I think potentially behind De Bruyne, and I think De Bruyne is sort of dipping upwards. I think Odegaard's just getting better.
They are doing
so much, so much so. And I think if you're looking at a player's ability, and hopefully maybe his numbers back him up, I rate him there. I think he'll be there.
If they do go on and do it, I think you're dead right. Yeah.
Would you sort of go with a similar sort of player potentially based on sort of your predictions?
If it's City, I think it will be given to Foden. I think he has been, for the last sort of 4 or 5 seasons, getting more and more included every season, more and more talismanic every season, bigger and bigger and bigger. Now that, again, similar to what you were saying about Odegaard and De Bruyne, now that De Bruyne is petering out a bit,
you see
Foden's even coming.
Yeah, I mean, he got more game time and more involved in the squad this year, like last season.
If City win it,
player of the year,
Foden. If you're correct and Arsenal win it, I think Odegaard's a solid shout.
So there's one more sort of fun one, the sack race. I've got 2 potential managers I see getting sacked. So I'm either looking, ironically, not at any of the teams at the bottom.
Oh, really?
Because I think some of them will be. Well, maybe actually, I might have a 3rd one in there now. I think about that. I think it's sort of going to be a battle between Maresca, Lopetegui, and now Nuno. And I think now the more I'm thinking about Nuno could potentially be the one.
Definitely Nuno, as I've said.
It's a volatile chairman. The more I'm thinking about
he'll be gone by January.
I think West Ham fans could potentially get on the back of Lopetegui because of the style of play. Will be the same. And Maresca, I'm just not sure if I buy into the hype of him yet. And so I don't know if they start sluggishly. I think fans can get on the back, and I think Top
fans unfortunately will. The only reason why I think they can't, but again, the ownership continuously amazes me, is we're still paying Potter currently to sit at home. And we're going to be doing the same with Poch.
So you almost want Potter to take the England job in that respect, because then you'd have to forfeit
his
wages.
We can't keep doing it. I don't. If we do, we keep. There's this thing going around the sort of Project 2030 is what we're sort of aiming towards. We're getting closer and closer to that. Eventually we are going to have to not blindly stick with, like, if we're in 15th or whatever, then yeah, maybe something will have to change. But I think we have enough natural quality for that not to be the case.
Okay.
So surely we just can't keep doing this. The reason that it worked throughout the 2000s was because you had Cech, you had Terry, you had Lampard, you had Ballack, you had Drogba. Like, regardless of what manager you put in there, similar to what we were saying with Liverpool, it doesn't really matter that much because the squad will carry you through. We don't have that anymore.
No,
We don't have the core or the natural leaders of the squad, so you can't keep changing it. One of them has to remain consistent. For the love of God, please.
So potentially Nuno is where you might be
Nuno.
thinking.
Nuno will be gone by January. I'd be willing.
Maybe earlier than that.
Do you have any Forest friends?
Not really, no.
I'd be willing to put a 20 quid bet on that he'll be gone by January. I'm that confident.
I've got friends that are Arsenal, United, Aston Villa,
Nothing to Forest.
Other Chelsea fans, but not Forest.
No, so yeah.
No, fair enough. No, thank you very much for coming. And
really enjoyable. Yeah. Do you want to quickly just go through your bottom three quickly?
So I'll just sort of do the quick run through of my positions. I will put this up if requested by people. So I've got 20th Southampton,
Nottingham Forest,
19th Nottingham Forest,
Southampton,
18th Leicester,
Brentford,
17th Ipswich, 16th Brentford,
Leicester,
15th Wolves,
Everton,
14th Everton,
Bournemouth,
13th Fulham,
Brighton,
12th Bournemouth,
Wolves,
11th Crystal Palace,
Fulham,
10th West Ham,
Crystal Palace,
9th Brighton,
West Ham,
8th Chelsea,
Newcastle,
7th Villa,
Man United,
6th Man United,
Chelsea,
5th Spurs,
Spurs,
4th Newcastle,
Villa,
3rd Liverpool,
Liverpool,
2nd City,
Arsenal,
1st Arsenal.
City. So it's Tottenham for me and you.
So you get Spurs and Ipswich. I think we've got the two exact ones. Otherwise, I think a lot of them are very sort of similar.
Within one or two.
Yeah.
No, solid. That's really enjoyable.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries at all. Until the next time.